one of the most common question I have people asking me, and maybe you have that too, is how often they should do postural exercises or corrective exercises. Like how often? Like what do you say to that?
Well, typically when I work with coaching clients, for example, I'll tell them at least 3 to 4 times a week. So a lot of frequency. And my rationale here is this: muscle imbalances, postural misalignments, these things don't form overnight, and they don't go away overnight either. Sometimes they form over many years, sometimes decades. And it's silly to think that they'll go away, in an extremely fast manner, considering how long it took to develop them in the first place. So once we have identified what muscle imbalances somebody is, working with and working to correct, and what postural misalignments and mobility issues, and we're very clear of that, once I get them, my own clients started on a plan, I tell them 3 to 4 times a week because, like I just said, the muscle imbalances, the postural misalignments, they didn't form overnight and they don't go away overnight. They form over many, many years, over a long period of time, with a lot of repetition and frequency. So what I try to do with my clients is condense time down onto itself by repeating what I know my client needs to do in a narrow period of time with a lot of frequency, packed into that small time window, 1 to 3 months. That way they're working on their own imbalances with a laser-like focus and really making a lot of progress on doing them. Obviously it's different for everybody. And, once you start moving past activation and stuff like that, and some self-myofascial release, you need to give your body a little bit more time to repair the muscle tissue that you're breaking down with your strength training, so that you wouldn't be able to do it back to back like that. But yeah, in general, most people should be doing, I believe, postural corrective exercises about 3 to 4 times a week. That's how much I do them. I simply just integrate my corrective exercises into my strength training workouts. Okay. You mentioned earlier thoracic mobility issues. That's very common, right? Pretty much everybody has that. Every single time before I strength train, I do thoracic mobilizations. I also do self-myofascial release on my pecs, and I do a little bit of activation for my upper back. Anytime before I train anything upper body, I do that. I also do lower body corrective exercises before my lower body days, glute activations, open up my hip flexors, work on internal rotation of my hips, stuff like that. So I think part of why people are so concerned about how long will this take? How long do I have to do it? Is because they do their corrective exercises outside of their workouts, which is good to do for a period of time, especially if they're really, really imbalanced people. Then you want them to kind of do a reset where they're not adding strength to dysfunction. They're just doing corrective exercises. But after about like a month of that, it's important to get back and, doing a well-rounded strength training plan, because strength is protective of your joints and your body in and of itself, right? Your muscles insulate all your joints. So becoming weak is not good. And if you get stuck in the corrective exercise hole, which is what I call that, where you're striving for perfection, you stop working out altogether. You just start doing corrective exercises only to the exclusion of all other forms of exercise. And you do this for a long period of time, you're going to get weak. And being weak is a major predisposing factor to injury in and of itself. So we don't want to get weak. So what I oftentimes recommend, about a month or so of corrective exercise that is targeted for them and fully tailored for them. And then after that, continue with a lot of those core corrective exercises, but simply just integrate them into like a warm up or a cool down that you do before or after your balanced strength training workouts. That way, that kind of answers that question. Like, well, how long will this take? How often should I be doing it? Well, you should be doing it kind of all the time on an ongoing basis, because whether people are going to like to hear this or not, once you have developed neuromuscular imbalances and postural misalignments, there is always this propensity that you're going to have to revert back to that, right? The ideal with doing corrective exercise is that you're totally going to eradicate all of your postural imbalances, your muscle imbalances, so on and so forth, and you're going to be perfect. That's oftentimes not the case. Oftentimes, when you first develop these things, now you're going to have the likelihood to develop them again in the future. So it's important to keep the things going on that gave you results integrated into your routine as a maintenance protocol so that you don't revert back to where you were before. So in this way, corrective exercise is kind of like an endless thing that you'll do for the rest of your life. And it doesn't have to be like this big time investment thing that requires a lot of sacrifice from you, right? And I think people's real concern when they ask you that question is coming from that. Like, how much do I have to sacrifice time, energy wise in order to, get from A to B? Well, 10 minutes a day, if you integrate it into your workout and it's something that you can easily do. So make it easy on yourself, and include it in part of a warm up or a cool down.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you. I always say that, yeah, you got to do it basically forever. Either if you're elderly and you can't really work out too much or whatever reasons, then you might only do corrective exercises, and that might be your workout, and that's okay. If you are able to, like you said, get back to some strength training, just integrate it together with your strength training.
Yeah.
You can do both. But I think the issue is that so many people just sit at their computers all day for 8 hours a day, and then they think that doing 3 or 4 times a week of corrective exercises is too much, but it's not. I think even in the beginning, they may want to do it even once a day or even twice a day in the very beginning.
It depends on what we're talking about too. Corrective exercise can involve different modalities: joint mobilizations, strengthening, self-myofascial release, stretching. Generally speaking, self-massage and stretching, that kind of stuff can be done with a high volume. You can do that every day, right?
Yeah.
Strengthening a muscle, that requires usually a little bit more recovery time in between your sessions. But somebody that people can get started with, like foam rolling, for example, and do that every day, really.
Yeah, exactly.